10 years ago, he changed the face of Halloween. Now, he's back.
Your VCR with wireless remote, just $338 this week during...
She used to be an iron horse 20 years ago. Used to bring the mail to me through the ice and snow. I've sat alone and watched her steaming through the night. 90 tons of thunder lighting up the sky. She was the princess of the night. We saw the writing on the wall. She was the princess of the night. I take a ride across the sky. Speeding smokestack lightning, engine working hard. Furnace on the footplate, shining in the night.
As the sun sets over North Hollywood on a warm autumn day overlooking the busy 101 freeway, the streets of the famous Universal City fill with fog. The bright show lights of the world-famous movie studio and its popular theme park attraction begin to dim as a sea of tourists and tired families pour out of the park's gates. Suddenly, the music changes abruptly. Gone are the melodic tunes of classic Hollywood blockbusters, and in their place, emphatic rhythms. High-energy guitar riffs, dense bass and drum beats, and the occasional eerie piano note. Into the theme park, a horde of guests swarm in. Electric, stepping deeper and deeper into the fog-filled streets of Universal Studios Hollywood until they are stopped at the edge of the park's New York sets. There is silence for a moment, when suddenly a large burst of flames erupts into the evening sky. The sounds of roaring chainsaws fill the air, and soon enough, screaming ensues. Up ahead, storming towards the crowd, a gang of masked ghouls attack and fade ominously into the fog. This is how Halloween Horror Nights begins every night at Universal Studios Hollywood. Without a doubt, one of the most popular themed Halloween attractions in the world, boasting record-breaking attendance for the theme park year in and year out. With its unique approach of adapting some of the most popular horror franchises into twistedly enthralling haunted houses, it's easy to see how the juggernaut of an event became so popular. Sticking by the theme park's philosophy of putting guests front and center into their favorite films, Halloween Horror Nights does the same with the most terrifying names in horror. From putting you into the grasp of the macabre Sawyer family and Leatherface and his bloody chainsaw from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, to putting you in a lively nightclub straight out of a music video where a demented version of Megastar, The Weeknd, is on your trail, nobody does Halloween like Universal does. But despite the event's massive popularity, especially in recent years, before Universal could take its throne as the premier Halloween event in Southern California and pack thousands of guests into its gates each season, the event had a rather rocky beginning.
He-Man, She-Ra, and 14 of their mighty friends and foes come together live for the first time ever this Christmas at Universal Studios. with a free super action toy for every kid 4 to 11 with paid admission. Meet them all and get a free toy. Now through January 5th, live at Universal.
By the mid-1980s, Universal Studios was soon blossoming into the theme park we know today, growing past much more than just its landmark studio tour attraction. The park began incorporating attractions based on intellectual properties such as Conan the Barbarian, He-Man, and the A-Team. Located in North Hollywood, just on the outskirts of all the major Hollywood landmarks, this made the park a prime attraction for tourists and locals alike looking to see the movies before their movies. Thus, as was the case with many of the major theme parks in Southern California, the park saw a surge of visitors during the summer and winter months and a sudden decrease in the spring and fall times. So, in 1986, Universal set into motion a plan to create a Halloween event centered around its rich film history. Inspired by Knott's Berry Farm, which in 1973 introduced the idea of putting on a spook show at their park for Halloween, Halloween Horror Night, as it was called, would be a 3-night event taking place from October 31st through November 2nd. The park would remain open after hours with a signature Halloween-themed attraction headlining the event. The Terror Tram, a nighttime version of the studio tour attraction, would take guests through some of the most famous sets in movie history. All the while, scare actors hid throughout the sets and jumped out at visitors riding the tram. Unlike anything the park had done before, the attraction garnered great attention from audiences who flocked to experience it, proving that there was indeed a desire for this kind of entertainment at the park. All was seemingly going well, and in Universal's favor, Halloween Horror Night was poised to be the success the park was hoping to achieve when, on opening night, Friday, October 31st, 1986, tragedy struck. Young scare actor Paul Ribald, who was tasked with jumping out at guests riding the tram, unfortunately lost his life when he got caught in between trams 3 and 4 and was dragged for almost 100 feet. Ribald, who worked in the park's merchandising department, volunteered to work for the event that night. He was stationed in costume in a parked tram filled with mannequins made to look like corpses. Eyewitnesses who experienced the tragic event believed it was all an act, a part of the show. There was no indication that the tram had any problems or anything like that. A publicity director told the LA Times it was an unfortunate event. No changes were made to the attraction that ran as usual for the Saturday and Sunday events, but in order to distance themselves from the tragedy, Universal canceled Halloween Horror Night for the foreseeable future. The date is June 7th, 1990. A ribbon-cutting ceremony is held to inaugurate the opening of Universal's brand new theme park on the East Coast. The Universal Orlando Resort, which had been in development since the early 80s, finally opened its doors.
Theme parks are a huge draw, and tonight Universal Studios celebrates the grand opening of its new theme park near Orlando.
Instantly a hit. Expanding upon the concept of the Hollywood theme park, Universal Orlando invited guests to come out and ride the movies with attractions based on popular films, Jaws, King Kong, and Ghostbusters. The new kid on the block, competing with the local parks, the likes of Walt Disney World and SeaWorld in the already popular Orlando area, Universal wasted no time in having its park stand out to guests. Catering to a much more mature audience, Universal was able to fill a void for a more adult and thrilling theme park experience that the likes of Walt Disney World could not offer. So without wasting any time, in 1991, Universal Orlando decided to host their very first Halloween event, inspired by the incredibly successful after-hours Halloween parties Walt Disney World had begun hosting in 1979. Universal Studios Fright Nights was held for 3 nights in October 1991. The event featured one single haunted house and 20 shows, advertising itself as more of a Halloween party for adults, similar to that of Disney's parties than the Halloween event we know today. The event was massively successful, prompting higher-ups at the park to greenlight a bigger event for the following year.
This Halloween, party with your favorite monsters during Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios, Florida. And right now, carve out savings of up to $16 off admission with this special coupon you'll find on 2 liters of Pepsi. For details, visit a Pepsi display near you. Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios. Hurry to Ticketmaster today for advance tickets, while you can still slash the price.
Returning in 1992, now aptly titled Halloween Horror Nights, the event expanded both its number of shows and haunted houses with more of an emphasis placed on the horror of Halloween Horror Nights. The success of the 1991 event did more than just pave the way for Florida's iteration of the event, which would go on to become a worldwide phenomenon. It reawakened interest in resurrecting horror nights at Universal Studios Hollywood. 6 years after the tragedy that took place during the park's first attempt at a Halloween event, Halloween Horror Nights returned to Universal Studios Hollywood in 1992, more akin to the event the Orlando Park held the year before than its prior iteration. HHN 1992 saw the event hold 2 haunted mazes, a staggering 16 live shows, and the return of the Tram. The shows, largely composed of intellectual properties, included Chucky's in-your-face insults from the Child's Play movies, Beetlejuice's Graveyard Review, and a Penn and Teller magic show, among a lineup of other original shows such as the Carnival of Carnage, a freak show of sorts with performers committing death-defying acts, the Death Globe, a horror stunt spectacular, and the Tower of Torture, which featured performers engaging in glass walking and saber eating. For the haunted houses, Universal kept it to a minimum, featuring a lineup of only 2 attractions. The Maze of Maniacs placed you in the ever-so-familiar haunted house setting of a rundown asylum where all the inmates had escaped and were after you. Take a turn for the worse in this wicked, winding asylum of murders and misfits. Its description read, "The second maze, titled Nightmare Alley, took you through a house of horror where movie monsters and maniacs invite you in for a bite." Featuring familiar favorites such as the Universal classic monsters, this was the first maze to incorporate an intellectual property. The Tram also returned for the 1992 event, albeit not in the same format as it was previously seen. Still taking guests through the famed Universal sets after dark, highlighting many of the locations where famous horror films were made, the attraction scrapped the use of all live talent completely, and instead used various themed props and effects to give the audience a good jolt. Thematically, the event was a step in the right direction, but unfortunately, Halloween Horror Nights 1992 was a commercial failure. Interest in the event had cooled, and attendance didn't warrant bringing the event back the following year, ultimately placing it on another hiatus for the next 5 years. 1997 would see the park's 3rd attempt at Horror Nights, once again with a new strategy in place, keeping its focus on the haunted houses as the main source of entertainment as opposed to the shows. HHN 1997 featured 4 new mazes. Area 51 saw you roam through a top-secret government facility where alien creatures ran amok. Constructed in one of Universal's parking garages, this maze was heavily inspired by the, at the time, controversial alien autopsy footage that was supposedly conducted after the Roswell incident. It took guests through various scenes, including the infamous alien autopsy, an alien ship, and an alien morgue in which guests had to push through rather realistic alien corpses hanging from the ceiling. Perhaps one of the most bizarre concepts ever realized. The creature from the Black Lagoon's Monster Aquarium placed you in an aquarium filled with monsters. Located in the SlaughterWorld stage area and loosely themed around the creature of the Black Lagoon, this maze featured odd vignettes with animatronics and static figures submerged underwater and the occasional stunt performer spraying you with water. The classic Monsters maze placed you front and center in Universal's terrifying legacy of monsters and madmen, with favorites such as Frankenstein's monster, Count Dracula, and the Bride lunging at you from the shadows. Lastly, the Crypt Keeper's film vault utilized the popular Crypt Keeper icon from the Tales from the Crypt television series to present a mashup of horrifying modern-day horror movies. Although unlicensed, Universal used various popular IPs throughout the maze. Characters such as Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger were spotted among Norman Bates, while scenes from recent hits such as Scream, Dr. Giggles, and Wes Craven's Shocker were recreated. Slimming down the show countdown to 4, HHN 1997 saw the return of Beetlejuice's Graveyard Review and the Freak Show, now named Circus of Freaks. But most significantly, 1997 saw the introduction of the highly popular Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure Show, a satire show taking the titular characters from the Bill and Ted films and placing them on some kind of adventure around current pop culture events. A concept Hallowed borrowed from the Orlando event that had been introduced back in 1992. Audiences responded rather well to the new format HHN began to establish in 1997. It was still not the smash hit Universal was hoping for, but there was great potential with its ideas around intellectual property-based haunts, prompting Universal to bring back Horror Nights the following season.
Lady, I just wanted to give you the flyer.
The 1998 event had a very similar format to that of 1997. It remained hosting only 4 mazes, but increased the show count to 5. A majority of the mazes that year were rehashed from the previous year. The classic monsters returned in a maze renamed Classic Creature Features. Albeit essentially the same maze as the prior year, notably, it featured the inclusion of the Phantom of the Opera and the Wolfman. The Crypt Keeper also returned in the Crypt Keeper's Screaming Room, which was the same concept as the previous year, a mashup of modern-day horror icons, the likes of Ghostface and Chucky. Aliens were also back at Horror Nights in a rethemed maze titled Alien Assault, which would take you into the extraterrestrial spaceship as they tried to harvest your organs. Brand new for 1998, Universal would see their first major collaboration on a Halloween attraction with Clive Barker's Freaks. Taking the idea of turning haunted houses into living horror movies, Universal reached out to popular author turned director Clive Barker, most notably known for Hellraiser, to create an attraction for Halloween Horror Nights. Barker, who was very keen on the idea, stated that he was hoping to accomplish an art show with a boo factor. He designed, storyboarded, and even worked on makeup for the attraction. Freaks was a 12-room circus from hell in which caretaker General Santiago took you through oddly disturbing vignettes featuring the chicken eater, the double-headed freak, and the pregnant bride with an alien baby. We brought in the greatest mind in horror to create what will truly be the most interesting haunted experience ever. Norm Kahn, Universal's Vice President of Entertainment, said about the attraction, "You won't see any cobwebs anywhere near this attraction. There won't be any gravestones or fake spiders. It's going to be about something fresh, Barker told the LA Times. Universal haven't made me water anything down. There's something deeply perverse about this. Indeed, perversive. The attraction pushed the line on what a haunted house could be. Clive Barker's collection of horrifying oddities would open the door for a new style of attraction. One less interested in plastic pumpkins and rubber spiders and more in tune with boundary-pushing gore and hyper-realistic effects. 1998 featured 5 live shows. Returning from the previous year, the Carnival of Carnage Freak Show and Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure. Chucky was also back in the brand new Chucky's Wedding Chapel. Themed to the recently released Bride of Chucky film, the show saw nightly weddings take place between Chucky and his bride Tiffany. New for 1998, SlaughterWorld took the concept of the daytime Waterworld stunt show and added horror elements to it. Lastly, cover band Black Diamond provided a nightly Kiss tribute show. Darker in tone than any of the prior events, yet this time around a success. There was already bigger plans in its foresight for Halloween Horror Nights. 1999 would see HHN return to Universal in its biggest event yet. With more nights than ever before, the event expanded its haunted house lineup to 5. The Universal Monsters were back once again in their reused creature features maze. Being the only rehash from the year before, the additional 4 mazes were brand new for 1999. Cleaver's Meat Locker, the only original maze designed by Universal's creative team, took you through a typical slaughterhouse-themed attraction where bloodthirsty butchers hack their way through various cuts of meat, including human flesh. Take an intimate tour through the arteries of a meat processing plant. Don't worry, no animals will be harmed. But humans, well, they're on their way to being the dinner special. So enjoy yourself as an inbred horde of old cannibals lead you towards the meat grinder. Vegetarians, beware. The Mummy, which besides the mash-up houses of the prior years would become the first true adaptation of a film to a maze, took the plot of the 1999 blockbuster hit and placed you in it. Featuring original props from the blockbuster movie, The Mummy Maze unleashes the curse bestowed upon the evil high priest, Imhotep, who was sentenced to eternity as one of the living dead. Go deep within the tombs of the Humanaptra pyramids, amid rotting corpses, and stumble upon the ancient art of mummification and feel the slithering crawl of flesh-eating scarabs. The success of this attraction in the film would later inspire a daytime haunted attraction based on the film's sequel, The Mummy Returns, in 2001. After the immense success Universal saw the prior year in their collaboration with Clive Barker, the park would decide to invite him back to design a new maze for the 1999 event. Bigger and more ambitious than the maze of the previous year, Clive Barker's hell dared you to enter into a putrid pit of infernal damnation that only Clive Barker could conjure. Inspired by a nightmare that Barker had, the maze took you through the circles of hell as wicked demons attacked you from every angle. As word of mouth spread about the intensity of last year's attraction, the maze saw wait times of up to 3 hours, easily being the crowd favorite of the year. Playing off the success of their Clive Barker collaboration this year, Universal also decided to invite yet another popular name to design a haunted attraction. The thrilling, chilling world of Rob Zombie would mark the first collaboration between Halloween Horror Nights and musician/filmmaker Rob Zombie. A maze that placed you inside the most depraved realm of all, Rob Zombie's brain, where the living dead reign supreme. Based on songs from his album, Hellbilly Deluxe, the attraction unraveled a succession of strange and progressively more horrifying rooms that spiraled guests through a wild, psychotic ride of demonic dementia. Guests would enter the maze through a giant replica of Zombie's head. A spinning tunnel would then lead into various rooms based around hit songs such as Dragula and Demonoid Phenomenon, while characters such as the Living Dead Girl and Super Beast attacked guests walking through. Being at the height of his musical career, this maze also drew in large crowds, prompting a rather enriching relationship between Rob Zombie and Universal, which at the time would extend to more than just Halloween Horror Nights. HHN 1999 kept the show count at 4 with popular favorites The Carnival of Carnage, Chucky's Insult Emporium, and Bill and Ted's Returning. New that year, the Animal House of Horrors would see an overlay to the Daytime Animal Actors Show, a scripted show in where supposed man-eating animals ran amok. Every year you want to top the year before, to scare the hell out of people, a spokesman for the park said about the 1999 event. Horror is looked upon as part of our heritage. We want to emphasize that. Easily the most ambitious and elaborate HHN yet, the 1999 event saw a positive reception from the guests who attended. Albeit more than had visited the year before, Horror Nights still was not producing the numbers the park had anticipated, leading some within the park to be wary about its future. But still, Universal would go on to renew Halloween Horror Nights for the 2000 season. The 2000 event would see yet another expansion to Halloween Horror Nights with 5 all-new mazes, 5 shows, and for the first time ever, a scare zone. HHN 2000 desperately looked to connect more with audiences and bring in a larger crowd. Sticking to the plan of incorporating some of the most popular names in horror for the 2000 season, Universal continued their relationship with Clive Barker in an all-new maze. Clive Barker's Harvest was easily the most ambitious and story-driven out of the 3 attractions he had designed. Encounter carnivorous as they reap a crop of human flesh in a den of terror that pushes the boundaries of any maze experience. Its description read, "You'll walk through a hole in the wall of a mausoleum leading into the ground where something is reclaiming the dead to incubate its young." The maze, which began with a large mausoleum facade, took you underneath a graveyard where disturbing creatures called the Vipex were harvesting rotting bodies, hence the name. The deeper you traveled into the maze, the bigger the Vipex grew as they continued their harvest until eventually you met face to face with a giant animatronic crawling its way out of a tunnel. Although Barker claims the idea for the maze came to him in a dream, the Vipex had a lot of similarities to the Xenomorph from the Alien franchise. The baby Vipex attached themselves to the faces of the various corpses like the face huggers and would then subsequently burst out of their chests in gory fashion. Gorier and much more disturbing than the 2 prior mazes, Harvest pushed the bar even further. With various scenes, infamous for their taboo subject matter, the maze was unlike anything anyone had ever seen at a theme park. There is a part of us that wants the taboo, that wants the forbidden, and that wants to be pushed a little further beyond where we normally tread, Barker said about the maze. "I wouldn't want a bunch of 6-year-olds going around the maze at Universal. We're putting some strong images in there. I want it to be strong, visceral entertainment. It's not meant for kids. We're attempting to goose people. You always want to make it a little more intense than what people think they're going to get. That's part of the fun of it." Barker wouldn't be the only one to push the bar for horror entertainment in 2000. During the production of the prior years The Thrilling, Chilling World of Rob Zombie, musician Rob Zombie came up with an idea for a feature film. After the positive reception of the attraction, Zombie was invited to the office of the head of production for the movie studio to pitch ideas. Zombie pitched the idea he came up with, and 2 months later, it was in production on the Universal lot. A grimy and incredibly gratuitous slasher film, House of a Thousand Corpses wrapped production in the fall of 2000 and was planned to have a maze based off of it at Halloween Horror Nights as a preview for its release. The maze began construction in tandem with the filming of the movie, with various of the most iconic scenes being recreated. All was going according to plan until the studio sat to watch a rough cut of the film. Executives realized that if released, the film would be subject to the dreaded NC-17 rating, effectively choosing to put the film on hold. That placed the attraction in an interesting position. Essentially finished as the news came out regarding its delay, the park decided to rename the maze Rob Zombie's American Nightmare. Keeping many of the scenes and characters from the film, the maze featured scenes such as the murder ride and Dr. Satan's catacombs, with characters such as Captain Spaulding and Otis Driftwood making appearances. Being similar in nature to the film, the maze was a macabre journey into the morbid and depraved. Gory as all hell, enough to make even the least squeamish squirm. New for 2000, Universal decided to collaborate with yet another household name. One of the most bizarrely unexpected collaborations ever. Universal reached out to popular WWE superstar The Undertaker to design a maze. The Undertaker, No Mercy, was a raw, in-your-face horror experience where you faced down demons assaulting you from all sides in the funeral parlor home of WWE's The Undertaker, where the family business is evil. Taking the grungy style WWE was known for at the time and placing it in a haunted house setting featuring various wrestlers such as The Undertaker, his brother Kane, and Mankind was an interesting choice for sure. Somewhat more in line to the general HHN experience, Universal also reached out to filmmaker Joss Whedon, who agreed to collaborate on a maze based on his popular Angel and Buffy the Vampire Slayer television shows. Buffy and Angel, Hellmouth Haunt invited guests to step into the worlds of both shows. Starting with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, guests walked through iconic locations from the show, including Buffy's dorm and the Sunnydale Park. All the while, they were being chased down by bloodthirsty vampires. Down into a subway, guests would then find themselves in Los Angeles in the world of Angel. Here they would walk through iconic sets, including Angel's apartment and the Wolfram and Hart firm, as they encountered many of the popular characters from the show. Different in tone from the other attractions featured that year, many guests who experienced it said it was weaker in scares and not as amusing for people who weren't already fans of the shows. Last on the lineup for the 2000 event, Universal's creative team strung together a maze titled Blood Theater. Similar to its mashup mazes of the years prior, the attraction took guests through Universal's epic library of horror films, including, once again, the Universal Classic Monsters, and a three-dimensional version of Psycho, among others. Essentially a mashup of the creature features and Crypt Keeper mazes the event had featured since its resurgence in 1997. The attraction lacked originality, and while sure the Universal Monsters are thoroughly beloved characters, this incarnation of them at the event quickly ran stale. The maze lineup for HHN 2000, while seemingly promising on paper, wasn't necessarily the most resonant with audiences. With a split divide by those who were off-put by the extreme gore of attractions such as Clive Barker's Harvest and Rob Zombie's American Nightmare, and those who didn't appreciate the quirky antics of the Buffy and Undertaker mazes. It wasn't necessarily clear who the target audience was that Universal was trying to reach for the 2000 event. Even the shows, which were all the same shows from the prior years, including Bill and Ted's, Chucky's Insult Emporium, and the Carnival of Carnage, failed to bring anything new to the table. If at all, the only significant thing the 2000 event introduced was the use of scare zones, themed sections of the park's common areas infested with roaming scare actors. An interesting idea borrowed from the Orlando event and made popular by neighbor Knott's Scary Farm, who one could make the case is more well known for its thematic scare zones than its mazes, came too little too late. Nightmare Creatures 2, located by the park's Moulin Rouge area, most commonly known as French Street today, pitted guests against the evil Adam Crowley and his hideous board of lab experiment creatures as they prepare to take over the world. The first of its kind officially at the Hollywood event, the zone was a step in the right direction, which came at an unfortunate point in time. A lack of clear vision, of strong creative ideas, an over-reliance on outside sources to design mazes, many of which's visions didn't necessarily collide with what Universal was hoping to produce, could all be reasons to blame for why the 2000 event ultimately failed. The one thing that remained certain was that audiences were not responding to the event. There was no influx of visitors to the park dying to experience Halloween Horror Nights. The experiment, which had clawed its way to 4 seasons at the park, had ultimately failed, with Universal choosing to cancel the event in its current incarnation after the 2000 season. Hope for any success with the event at Universal Hollywood had been severely dashed. After 3 attempts in the span of 15 years, it would take a radically different approach to make the event a success, an approach Universal wasn't looking to place any bets on any time in the near future, shelving it into another long 6-year hiatus. The story of Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Hollywood is one of trial and error, of persistence in an idea that would go on to become one of the most influential concepts in the theme park and haunt sphere, of the studio that essentially created the horror film, struggling to find its own originality and identity in a growing landscape of themed entertainment. Perhaps all that was needed was a little of that innovation that created the genre and a deep understanding and respect for it. A fresh idea that would usher in a new world of gods and monsters.
Forever yours, nocturnal me. Take